What is education, and why is education important? Is it important? After all, what's the real purpose of getting educated about anything? We so frequently take education and the process for learning in general totally for granted. Not only that, but the ways in which we think. How we've gone about structuring our own consciousness itself has largely remained unchanged for a long, long time. So how do we literally change our minds? Can we reconfigure our own ways of thinking? And if so, how? Join Dr. Joseph Atman, the founder of one of the world's most revolutionary educational centers, Middletree, and award-winning broadcaster Tammy Trujillo for Educate Everyone and explore the mysteries of our own consciousness and the education we implement in order for it to be what it is.
Our guest on this episode of Educate Everyone is Mike Morales. He's the Enrollment Service Manager at Middletree, Claremont. Mike leads efforts to drive enrollment growth and strengthen community relationships. He has over a decade of experience in higher education and brings a deep understanding of student needs and a strong background in relationship management and sales. Mike oversees a variety of responsibilities central to the success of Middletree's learning programs, everything from community outreach to guiding families through the enrollment process. He's especially passionate about helping parents navigate the different educational opportunities that Middletree offers, ensuring each student is placed in the program that best supports their academic journey.
So here with Mike Morales, and you're our Enrollment Service Manager at Middletree's headquarters location. What would you say that it is that you do around here, Mr. Mike?
I kind of do a lot of things, Joe. What's nice about that is
we're serving as your performance review and a podcast at the same time. So.
Yes. It's helping parents understand the wide range of programs available and then guiding them to choose the right fit for their students. So our 3 pillars for success is our unlimited program, which is by far the most popular and most affordable, which is more of a come in as often as the student wants and they can stay as long as they need. And what that is basically they come in anytime after school and they get that individualized attention where if they don't understand it, an educator sits down with them and meets them where they're at and where they want to be. It's also affordable as well. So our pricing ensures that it's accessible to everyone. And that's something that I've talked to parents about on a regular basis, where there's students that are 45 deep into a class. Every student learns differently. We have our dyslexia support program. We also have our summer programs, which is our reboot, which focuses on English and math skills during the summer. And we also have our summer shade program, which is more of a hands-on development and education. And so it's basically getting the academics and creativity and they mash it together. And it's project-based activities that focuses on theater, reading, science, math, and art. And we also have our SEED, which is our personalized tutoring, which is going to be more of a one-on-one hourly sessions. And those are going to be tailored more to the unique learning style for that student. And it's on any subjects.
I basically used to do your job. That was one of the main components of my job. When I was doing it, parents were chiefly concerned about their students' well-being. And I always thought that's really actually what it came down to. And the academic component of students' lives played such an important role within their general well-being. But that's really what parents were trying to ultimately get at. What do you sense, or what do parents come to you and talk about as their number one concern?
What I'm hearing from parents is the way they're teaching it in the school, their student doesn't understand it. And when the parent sits down with their student, they're trying to teach them, the parent's teaching it the wrong way because of the new format that's being put in place. The educational system, one of those being math, it's not how it was done 20, 25 years ago. Now they're supposed to explain the problem and show them how they got there, where you have parents who are going back and forth with their student. They're showing them how to do it, and the student's going back, you're doing this wrong. So parents come here and say, you know what, this is how I learned the math, or I learned the subject. I'm not teaching it the right way, how they're learning it in school. So they are looking at us, and they're needing that help.
And what you're talking about specifically as Common Core that was put into place, not just in California, but around the country about 10 years ago, right around when Middletree was first conceived. And the reason for Common Core was that prior to having what they call the standards, the Common Core standards, that a third grade student in Missouri might be learning something different than a third grade student in Washington State. So the Common Core standards, and they are exactly as they are named, it's something that's common to all students, a set of standards that students are generally all going to be learning similar things as they progress through the educational system. By the time you graduate, everyone should have more or less the same sort of standardized education.
Yes.
The debate about how beneficial that is can be had here or elsewhere, but that was the intention. And the other thing that you're describing is that parents don't know how to teach their students generally comes up in math,
yes,
because that's been the biggest change, right? And what you're describing, something that happened within the Common Core standards, within that curriculum, is that they changed the way that they do teach a number of things, but math specifically, and because people tend to think, well, math is math, right? 1 + 1 = 2, right? You get to the solution in a very specific and formulaic way.
Yes,
and that's true. The way that we were all taught it, if you were in school before 10, 15 years ago, there was one way to do problems, and that was just how you did it. We all kind of learned it the same way. Now the approach is quite a bit different within Common Core standards. I've frequently described it to people as trying to do math in the way that we do it as adults, almost, just to get people to understand it. And the best example is if you get the bill and, the bill is $108 and you want to leave a 20% tip. You go, okay, shoot, what's 20% of 108? Well, I don't know. I'm not a calculator,
yes,
right? But you do generally know what 10% of 108 is, right? Because that's pretty easy math. So that you know what that 10% is, and then you double it. So in the traditional form, to get to that 20%, thered be some multiplying involved, there'd be some dividing potentially involved, right? There,
yes,
you're carrying numbers and you're incorporating the sum to the 8th digit of pi, frequently, or whatever kind of methodology was implemented to find the solution. Whereas in
yes,
Common Core, you're doing a lot of estimating and getting in the ballpark with steps, right? Or like step 1, like I just described. Well, if you know just basic kind of math and, decimal places and all that, you know what that 10% of 108 is. And then you just multiply that by 2. So you go through it step by step. And a lot of Common Core math that is taught now is that step-by-step approach where the first step is not, getting to the answer. It's getting in the ballpark of the answer. And then the second step is getting closer to the answer. The third step is getting closer to the answer. But then we're really confusing is there are a multitude of different ways to get there. And they teach all the different ways, right? But they're trying to, and I think Common Core is well-intended, but I think that it's frequently poorly executed because now you're giving educators almost too many tools. And again, why I say I think it's well-intended is you're trying to, just as you said before, Mike, you're trying to figure out what kind of learners do we have?
exactly.
How do they do math? How do they learn just in general?
And the classes are just so overpopulated. 45 students in one class. And again, every student learns differently. And it's on to the next subject. So you have these students who are being left behind. And the resources in the school system, it's not there. It's not, because it's constantly going on to the next subject, where with us here at Middletree, that's something where the student can stay here and they understand it, because the educator will sit down with them and they won't give them the answer. They're going to help them fish for it. And that's something that you've always said. We're not here to give the answers. We're here to go and help them fish for it. So once that student understands it, that light bulb goes off and they say, wow, I got this. And what the educator does, and this is on our unlimited program as well as our or seat by the hour. The educator will go and walk around, help other students out, and then they'll come back and they'll revisit. And I've talked to parents who their students have gone from an F, a D in the class to a higher grade, which is awesome. And it's because of our educators here at Middletree.
Our staff does a great job, but to work in the unlimited program also kind of takes a little bit of a different skill set than traditional educators are used to, because there's no other program out there that kind of does that unlimited model where folks are floating around, sitting with students for as long as they want or that students need them to. Exactly. But then you're setting them to task, right? I always would say, we can lead your student to water, but we can't make them think.
Exactly.
We want to draw that out of them, but ultimately it's on the student to perform. With the unlimited program, the cool thing about it is that students at some point understand that, oh, this really is on me. I've got all the time that I need, right? I've got all the resources. I always liken it to a gym where if you want to walk out of there looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you can do that. That is on you. You've got the membership. Literally, we provide personal trainers, personal academic trainers for folks that we will sit there and work with them as long as they want. So at some point, it clicks on within the student that this really is actually on me. And also, hey, not everybody is an A student, but there's no excuse to not be your best. And if your best is minus student, then again, there's just no excuse to not be your best.
You hit the nail on the head on that one, Joe. It's one of those where it's getting that student to the next level. And what's nice about that as well is parents get to actually be parents again, instead of having to fight back and forth on what they're trying to teach their student. They get to actually have that family time. If it's sitting around the table, if it's a family night, board games, just spending time with one another, parents really enjoy getting that time back.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on students, and schooling is so centralized to the way that we sort of upbring our students, kids in this country. School's just a central part of that. And it's taken on kind of a life of its own. Sometimes I wonder if it's too centralized so far as its importance, or like too much importance is put on doing your flippin' math homework as opposed to just being a person, being a kid, being a human being. I think we do probably a better job in this country than some others.
And that's one thing as well, as parents have their students in extracurricular activities. And when students come in, and sometimes you have those students who just flat out tell you, my mom's making me or my dad's making me. It's one of those where I always put it back on them. And again, putting that on them, because I'll ask them, are you in any sports and extracurricular activities? And some of them will say, yes, I am. Well, if you're not maintaining your grades, you're not eligible to play. And parents really, really like that, just because it's not only coming from a parent, it's coming from a professional. And the student gets to see that and gets to hear that. So they do put in that work, which I've used that numerous times. And you have a student who says, you know what, fine, let me go outside of home where it's going to be more comfortable. Let me get the actual help that I need. I've heard and I've even seen the results, and it's definitely there. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because it's helping individuals understand. And I've been asked, what do you do for work? And I tell people, I help change lives, because it's getting those individuals to that next level.
Academics are obviously central to just kind of like, as I was saying, like developing people in certain ways. And that's the point of education, is getting people exposed to things that they otherwise wouldn't be, and then having an understanding about the world, hopefully having an understanding about their place within it. Again, Mike, I did your job for a long time. And I would say more often than not, when a student would come in with their parent, they weren't thrilled to be there.
No.
Obviously, right? Because students, are struggling. And I don't like the word tutoring. I've never liked it, because it's such a negative connotation, like, oh, you need academic support. And so I saw that on the faces of a lot of students throughout the years. But I think the cool thing about what we're doing, to your point, is that we're changing a perspective, and we're trying to change it. It's part of our mission, is to really try and change people's relationship to their own education and their perception of what education could be if it was more tailored, if there wasn't as much pressure, like test on Tuesday. And, if you were sick for the review, yesterday, well, too bad, because we're moving on, because that's the educational system that we've come up with, where we just do this on this day and that on that day. And we've only got one teacher and there are 30 to 40 students, who knows how many in a class, and yada, yada. So we all know what those issues are. That's where we have really tried to counterbalance that and say, well, students can come whenever they want to, stay as long as they need to, study whatever they have to. We'll particularize, we'll personalize it. And if they don't get it today, they just come back tomorrow. It's not rocket science, really. It's a very simple fix that very few folks are doing. When a student was comprehending something, that light bulb goes off on top of their head. There's almost no greater joy professionally than to see that, oh, you've helped out somebody and that they get it, and that can sort of be a game changer with them, even if it's just in that moment.
And I've seen that live where I'm giving a tour to prospective families where the student will go and perk up and say, well, I'm understanding this now. So you do see that light bulb that goes off on top of their head.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
We got a lot of students who are like everydayers, right? They're there more often than we are.
And it's having that routine, which is nice.
And it's also just about having a place to go, because I think something that is also unique that we offer is, students don't have their own space really at all in the world. Most of them, even the most affluent and privileged ones, they live at their parents' house, they go to school, they don't have their own space. And I'd like to think that they look at Middle Tree as a place it's designed for them, and then you give them that personalized attention, that it feels much more like they have some ownership and possession of that.
And I've heard that where I've been walking around, or parents will pick up their students and they'll say, hey, you know what, little Johnny really enjoys it here. And that's one of the things that's nice, because, again, it's giving back that parent time with their student.
Yep.
It's going and having them be a mom, be a dad, and getting to spend that time. And that's where one of our values is that student-centric approach.
You're a new father, so what do you want for your new child, but what do you want as a father?
Academics is going to be number one, obviously. And it's one of those where my wife and I have already talked about, even though she's a month old, we've talked about what can we do right now as parents, by reading to her, having her listen to music and having that time. And then obviously there's going to be the TK, kindergarten, having her just excel and be her best self.
I would think, I'm not a parent, but I would think that generally as a parent, you want your child to be happy and healthy. That's the end. That's the beginning and end of the list. You don't look at your newborn baby and say, gosh, I hope they grow up to be a great lawyer. I hope they grow up to be a great research assistant. That's not generally what we're thinking about. But what we're doing with our mission really at Middle Tree, I think, really speaks to trying to at least get people that balance with their life so that they can be happy and healthy. And if we can provide some of that joy for them, if we can provide some guidance for them, then hopefully that balance will kind of strike of itself at some point. And if we can play a part in that, that's our role for parents and for students and for everybody.
And it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's personalized for every student, which is awesome. And like I said, I've talked to parents, and there's really nothing out there like what we have here at Middle Tree. It's one of those where we're here to service and to help those students become better. And we have, like I said, an array of different programs. But again, one of those by far is going to be our unlimited, which is most affordable, most popular that we have. And that's throughout the school year. And then we lead into our summer programs, as well as our other Seed by the Hour and all our dyslexia support program as well.
And don't forget, we're opening up a new program with Allied Health coming up. So that's going to be real exciting, where we're going to be training medical assistants. So providing career paths for people. That's going to be a total game changer, not just for Middle Tree, but for people out there who are looking to get into that field. Because at the forefront initially of our mission was, as you mentioned, Mike, this accessibility factor, that we make sure that anybody who wants to be a part of what we do is not barriered by financial capacity.
Exactly.
Affordability. We're always trying to work with people, right, to make sure that they can afford it regardless of their financial situation. So people doing that medical assistant career path, that can be literally tens of thousands of dollars. You also used to work
for profit
doing something similar for a for-profit organization, and it's tens of thousands of dollars to get certified.
Yes.
I think we're going to do it at about a tenth of the cost of most programs. Okay, good sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for doing what you do for us every day, Mr. Mike.
And now the Middle Tree Minute.
This is Kristen Hernandez, Middle Tree's Executive Assistant. Do you want your students to really understand something? Ask them to teach it back to you, like you've never heard it before. This is called the Feynman technique. If they can explain it in simple terms, they've mastered it. If they stumble, that's a clue they need to go back and review. It works for math, science, and even history. You might learn something new too. And that's the Middle Tree Minute.
And now a quick look into Dr. Atman's book, A Philosophical War. The last time we talked about when you're driving, you can be on the same road, but if you're in a different vehicle each time, it can really be a very different kind of experience. So, Joe, how does that relate to this project and how you're talking about human consciousness?
The example there again is if, you're in a certain vehicle driving down the road, you're going to experience the road in a certain way, as opposed to if you get in a different vehicle, a truck versus a sports car, same exact road, same time of day, you're going to have a slightly different experience, just given that you've surrounded yourself in literally a different vehicle, in a different shell, in a different mode. And so it's something that we really just don't think about, beings, is that we have made a very particular choice of the mode of our own consciousness. And so human beings, we've all decided to do this business of consciousness within this mode or within this vehicle. And the general kind of relationship that we have to phenomena, to the things that we observe, is things are happening outside of us, kind of like there's a movie that's playing, and it's been playing for longer than we know. There's this reel that's continually in this linear from A to B to C sort of progression. And we sort of, as individuals, just kind of picked it up right in the middle of the movie. And we're observing this movie and we're watching things happen within it. And so that's kind of the way in which we perceive the world, where we as human beings are just kind of caught up in the flow of time, and yet we need to, in some way, shape, or form, understand that our perception of what is happening is integral to the happening itself. There is a lot of really interesting work in this regard, scientific and philosophical, but there are some interesting experiments that are done between consciousness and phenomena and the relationship that one has on the other. So we might be driving down this road altogether in this certain vehicle, but again, what if we retooled the vehicle to make it higher up, to give us a lift, to jack up the frame and give us a higher perspective on the horizon as we're driving down the road? Well, if we were able to do that, again, we'd have a different experience. And yet that horizon is still there. It's been there, right? But we're able to then acknowledge it in a different way because we've changed our perception. We've changed our capacity within that mode to experience something that, again, may have always been there, but we were unable to observe it. Where it gets real kind of tricky is if we were never observing it, would it have been there in the first place? So I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what would our lives be if we were able to change the kind of mode of consciousness just within our daily lives, just a little bit? What are things that we maybe aren't experiencing that we could be if we attuned our awareness in a slightly different way, if we focused on something different? And a lot of these, again, I want us to see are choices. We think that we are frequently just sort of the victims of experience and of consciousness, where you can really make some choices to be aware of things, to enact and enable yourself and focus your consciousness on various things and then have a different experience because of that focus. What does your life look like if you were able to change your focus, to change your mode, to change your perception?
Right.
And then further, what does the consciousness in a grander form of humanity look like if a number of different people had chosen to perceive things within phenomena in a different way? And so those are the questions that we need to start grappling with on very basic and fundamental levels. And then I think that we'll see that from those simple initial steps, we'll have a much vaster picture of what consciousness not only is, but what it can be.
Thank you for listening to Educate Everyone with Dr. Joseph Atman and Tammy Trujillo. Join us each week as we explore the inner workings of our own minds and the educational system which builds and supports it. Also, check out our website at middletree.org to see what opportunities Middletree's programs can offer you or your student. And join us on social media. If you have any questions you'd like Dr. Atman to answer, please leave them on a post or send us a message, and you may hear them answered on the next episode of Educate Everyone. Until then, thanks for tuning in.